one wakes up on a Tuesday morning and thinks, well, today's the day I'm going to lose myself. It usually doesn't happen dramatically. It happens microscopically, one compromise at a time. Every time you swallow your opinion or you make an apology, even though you don't owe anyone one, it's all of these tiny adjustments, usually in the name of love, and then another one, and then another one. And then one day someone asks you, what do you want? Or what do you want to do? What do you like to do? And you hear yourself saying, I honestly have no idea. Women don't lose themselves because they're weak. They lose themselves because they are remarkably adaptive. And adaptation is one of the greatest survival mechanisms that a human brain has ever developed. For years, I misunderstood my own story. I thought I was becoming the best version of myself, the best wife, so super patient and accommodating and just the easiest person to live with, someone that never got involved with conflict of any sort. And if you're anything like hundreds of women that I have spoken to over the last year, a lot of that probably sounds familiar because women tell me that they stop bringing up certain topics, they stop asking for help, they stop laughing loudly, taking up space. And at first glance, those all sound like very separate stories, but I don't think they are. I think they're all the same story, and I think there's something fascinating about it. Our brains aren't actually designed to make us happy, they're designed to keep us alive, and those are two very different jobs. We know this. We know all about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change based on our repeated experience. And every day, our brains are strengthening those neural pathways. If your environment is safe, then your brain learns openness. If your environment is unpredictable, then your brain learns vigilance. If every time you're honest, it consistently creates conflict, well, guess what? You stop being honest. And it's not because you're dishonest, it's because your nervous system has quietly concluded this is not safe. And that's not weakness, that's adaptation. Think about learning how to drive. And gosh, I could talk about learning how to drive forever. I was a driver's ed instructor for 4 years. The first time you got behind the wheel, every single solitary thing requires an immense amount of concentration. The mirrors, the speed, the brake, the steering wheel, the turn signal. No one even knows their left and their right when they're learning how to drive. At the end of a simple drive, a short drive, you're mentally exhausted. Now, you probably drive home without even knowing how you got there. You're thinking about dinner, you're making an entire recipe because it's become such an automatic behavior. And that is exactly how relationships work. The first few times you notice that bringing up a certain topic leads to conflict, you consciously avoid it. Eventually, your brain doesn't ask permission anymore. It simply removes the topic from the conversation. You don't decide not to speak. You stop realizing you had anything to say anyway. And that distinction is so important. Imagine your personality as a beautiful house plant. Stay with me for a minute. If you put that plant into rich soil and you give it sunlight and you water it consistently, what happens? It grows. And it's not because you force it to grow, it's just because the environment allowed it to do so. Now imagine placing that same exact plant in a dark closet, and you don't have to pull the leaves off, you don't have to yell at it, you don't even have to touch it, but that environment changes it. That plant doesn't grow. And it's not because the plant forgot how to grow. It's because it adapted to the conditions that it was given. And people are exactly the same. Most women don't wake up and decide to become quiet or more careful or smaller. They adapt to the environment that rewards those behaviors. So before we go any further, I want to say something that is incredibly important, and it's not about blaming men. This is not even about just marriage. I've seen women lose themselves in every environment possible, friendships, work, at church, in your family. And I've seen men do the exact same thing. Any relationship where authenticity feels unsafe opens the door for this adaptation. This is a very human conversation. This is not in any way a gender war. And I think that that's why it is so important that we have this conversation. One of the biggest myths we've inherited is this: if you're a good partner, you should make the other person happy. For years, I believed that. I genuinely thought that it was my job to become an expert in someone else's happiness if I could just say the right words or anticipate and satisfy the needs, avoid any unnecessary conflict, then happiness would just exist. But looking back, I realized I had accepted a job description that absolutely no human being can fulfill. You cannot regulate another adult's emotions. Psychologists who study relationships, they often describe healthy partnerships as interdependent rather than codependent. No one wants to be in a codependent relationship. And that means that two whole people who support one another do so while remaining responsible for their own thoughts, feelings, and emotional regulation. By contrast, codependency often involves that you organize your entire identity around managing someone else's emotional state. If they're okay, then I'm okay. Are they okay? Oh, they're not okay, then I'm not okay. And that's so exhausting. And it's impossible because no matter how loving you are, no matter how patient you are, and no matter how emotionally intelligent you are, you cannot think enough good thoughts. You cannot say the perfect words. You cannot become this version of yourself that will create happiness inside of another person. And that should be the most freeing realization ever. And it makes me wonder how many women are carrying around this impossible assignment today, really believing that someday they're going to get an A on that. How many people wake up every morning believing, well, if he's upset, I failed. If there's tension, then I must have missed something. If only I were easier and lighter and quieter and more attractive or more organized, more affectionate, less emotional, then we would finally be okay. And I just want to lovingly tell you something and very firmly tell you something, that finish line does not exist. You're never going to get an A on that paper because you cannot earn emotional safety by becoming smaller. That's not how it works. You don't become more loved by someone by becoming less of yourself. And if you take nothing else from today's conversation, I really hope that you will remember this. Women rarely disappear all at once. They disappear one adaptation at a time. But here's the beautiful news. That same brain that learned to adapt can also learn to come home again. And that's where our story really begins. If we don't understand why this happens, we will spend the rest of our lives blaming ourselves. And we will think, well, I wasn't confident enough. I was not assertive enough. I should have had better boundaries. I should have left sooner. I hear that one a lot. But I don't think those are the first questions. I think the first question is, what was my nervous system trying to accomplish? Because our nervous system has one primary job, and it is not happiness or fulfillment or authenticity. It's what? We know this. It's safety. Our brain is constantly asking one question and one question over and over again, and it is, am I safe here? It is not, am I happy? Those are very different questions. And researchers who study attachment, and I love anything that has to do with attachment, have found something very remarkable. Human beings are wired for connection from the moment that we're born. I believe this with my whole soul. And a baby's survival literally depends on maintaining closeness with a caregiver. So our brains become incredibly skilled at asking, what do I need to do to preserve this relationship? Smile, cry, be quiet, be helpful, become invisible. Children are brilliant adapters. The problem, sadly, is that many adults never stop adapting. We simply change environments, and instead of adapting to our parents, we now adapt to partners, to bosses, to friends, to family, to our communities. And I think one of the biggest lies, there's so many lies that we've inherited, is this. We believe that we make decisions logically. However, psychology tells us something much more interesting. Much of what we call personality is actually adaptation. So let's think about this. How many things do you believe are just who you are that actually began as a survival strategy? Maybe you say, well, I'm just easygoing. Are you? Or did you learn conflict wasn't safe? Did you learn that you have to be the one to keep the peace? Maybe you say things like, well, I'm just not very emotional. That one rings true for me. Are you? Or did expressing emotion somehow cost you something? Maybe you say, "Oh, I'm just a people pleaser." No, no, I don't think anyone is born a people pleaser. People pleasing is often an incredibly intelligent adaptation. And it says things like, "I've learned that other people's comfort protects me." When you understand that, absolutely everything changes because now you're not looking at weakness, you're looking at survival. So women tell me all the time, I don't know why I couldn't just speak up. Maybe you couldn't. And it's not because you lacked courage, but it's because your brain had already decided that speaking up does not produce safety in that environment. If every difficult conversation you had ended in defensiveness or silence or criticism or stonewalling, do you think you're going to have those conversations? Because your brain already can predict the outcome before the conversation even begins, which means that you're no longer responding to what's actually happening today. You're responding to the pattern, you're responding to what actually happened yesterday and the day before. And think about how extraordinary that is. You haven't even opened your mouth yet, and your nervous system is already editing your conversation. So, this is why people say things like, "Well, I don't know why I didn't say anything." Because by the time your conscious mind entered the conversation, your nervous system already made so many decisions. Be quiet. Don't bring that up. Smile, change the subject, redirect, let it go. And those decisions happen in a fraction of a second. They are not moral failures, they are learned predictions. I used to believe that if I just found the right words and I put them in the right order and I said them at the right pace, in the right tone, at a certain volume, everything would finally click. And maybe you thought that too. Well, if I explain it differently, if I say it calmer, if I don't cry this time, or maybe I need to say after breakfast instead of after dinner. Eventually, I realized something heartbreaking. I was not looking for better communication. I was looking for the perfect formula that would finally make another human being respond differently, and that does not exist anywhere in the expanse of human existence because communication requires two willing participants. There is no amount of emotional intelligence that can replace someone else's willingness to listen. That realization did not make me hopeless. It actually made me very realistic and very strategic. And oh my gosh, so peaceful. Because there's another piece of research that completely changed how I think about relationships. And that comes from Dr. John Gottman. He found something very fascinating. And I've talked about this before, that healthy couples do not avoid conflict. They do argue, they do misunderstand each other, they do get frustrated just like the rest of us, and they also have bad days. The difference is not conflict, it is their ability to repair. And repair sounds simple, but it's so profound. It is the moment that someone says, "You're right. I'm sorry. Tell me more," or "Help me to understand. I think I'm missing something here. Let's try that again." And repair is what tells the nervous system that this relationship is safe enough for honesty. Without repair, conflict just accumulates and snowballs. And when conflict accumulates, that's when adaptation begins and you stop bringing things up. After all, what is the point? You stop asking for the things that you need because it never changes anyway. And you definitely stop sharing dreams because they're dismissed. So, again, it's not because you decided to become smaller, it's because you've learned that this part of you does not survive well here. One of the women in my community said something I'll never forget. She said, "I don't even know if I like the same music anymore." And it had nothing to do with music, it was about identity. When you spend years of your life organizing yourself around someone else's preferences, you don't even know what your own preferences are anymore. They get so quiet. And that's why I don't think healing is about becoming someone new at all. I think it's about reducing all of the noise so that you can finally hear yourself again. Our brain is constantly changing in response to our experience. Every new habit, every healthy conversation, and let's hope we have many, every honest boundary, every emotionally safe friendship, and every moment that we choose authenticity over performance, then we are strengthening our new neural pathways. In other words, the same brain that learned to survive can learn to thrive, and that is phenomenal news. The same nervous system that learned to stay very quiet can learn to speak, and the same woman who learned to make herself smaller can absolutely learn how to take up space again. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen just because someone says go ahead and do it, but because her brain finally receives a different message. I am safe now. I am safe here. And that maybe is the greatest misunderstanding about healing. People think healing means becoming fearless, and it's just not true. That is not at all what I have seen. Healing means that your nervous system slowly stops confusing danger and honesty. Healing is when your nervous system no longer mistakes authenticity as a threat. That's the work. Not becoming louder, not becoming tougher, not becoming someone else. It's simply becoming safe enough to be yourself. So if you're watching this today and you're thinking, maybe I've adapted, I don't want your next emotion to be guilt. I want it to be curiosity, because curiosity asks far better questions, not what's wrong with me? I can never get this right. But instead, what did I become brilliant at surviving? What single question has the power to transform how you see your life? And in the next part, I want to show you something that changed everything for me, because once I understood how adaptation works, then I stopped asking things like, how do I become a better wife, a better sister, a better employee, whatever? Or how do I become a stronger woman? I started asking completely different questions. How do I become myself again? Where can I become myself again? And like I said, the answer has nothing to do with becoming someone new. It has everything to do with rediscovering the woman who has been there all along. So, if adaptation is how do we slowly disappear, then the next question is, well, how do we come back? And this is the question that I hear a lot. Women will say, Karen, I don't even know who I am anymore. And maybe you've said those words. Maybe you've whispered them to yourself. Maybe you've said them aloud to someone. Chances are you felt them. And every time I hear that, I want to gently challenge one word, and not because it's wrong, because I think there's a more hopeful way to see it. I don't think you've lost yourself. I think you've lost access to yourself. Imagine someone walks into a library and turns off all the lights and says, there's no books in here. That's not true. The books are still there. We just can't see them. And I think that's exactly what happens to so many women. Your joy is still there. Your opinions is still there. Your creativity is 1000% still there, as well as your laughter and your curiosity. They've just been waiting in the dark. And one of the most beautiful discoveries in neuroscience and beautiful discoveries that I have had firsthand with so many women is that the brain doesn't stop changing just because you reach a certain age. Give me a break. Every experience, conversation, and habit, and new relationship, and opportunity, and who knows, anything changes it. And scientists call this experience dependent neuroplasticity. I call it hope, because it means simply this: you are not permanently shaped by your past. Anyone who believes that is falsely misled. Anyone who tells you that is in the dark in the library. You are continuously shaped by your present. Think about how extraordinary that is. If your nervous system learns to become quieter, it can learn to speak again. If it learned to apologize just for the mere fact of existing, it can learn confidence. If it learned to anticipate criticism, it can learn trust. Healing is not about erasing your past. It's about giving your brain enough new experiences that it begins to write a different future. And people imagine healing as something huge, this breakthrough, this life-changing conversation, the perfect therapist, a retreat, a book, and all of those things are fabulous and all of those things help. But the quiet healing looks much smaller. It's much less Instagram worthy. It just looks like saying no without explaining for 20 minutes. It looks like wearing the shirt that you love just because you love it without fear of any criticism, without giving a crap. It looks like ordering what you actually want to eat at dinner. It looks like apologizing without having to explain it, or just laughing a little bit too loud in the moment, and maybe calling a friend that you've been meaning to call. Those tiny moments, they may not seem that important, but neurologically, they are revolutionary, because every time you choose that authenticity over performing, well, your brain receives a new message. We're safe. I can do this. I did this. And then, of course, confidence grows every single time. So that's how healing happens. It's not just this one giant leap. It's kind of like death happens by 1,000 cuts. Well, the rebuild happens in thousands of repetitions. And research shows that humans thrive when there are three psychological needs that are supported: autonomy, competence, and connection. And autonomy means having the freedom to make choices that align with your values. Competence is the feeling that you can grow, you can learn, and you do have an impact. And connection is belonging with people who know the real you. And think about what adaptation does. It slowly erodes all three of those things. You stop making choices for yourself, you stop trusting your own judgment, and eventually you definitely stop feeling fully known. You don't even know yourself, never mind others knowing you. So no wonder people say, I don't know who I am anymore. It's not at all because they've disappeared. It's because the conditions that allowed them to flourish have been squeezed out. But the beautiful news is that identity does not have to be reinvented. It just needs space to grow again, like a perennial that spreads. So, how do we come home? We ask what feels true, not what feels impressive, not what feels acceptable or expected, but true. What feels true? And that one question can change your life. When someone invites me to go somewhere, I don't ask, shouldn't I go? What will they think? What do they want me to do? It's just, do I genuinely want to go? That's it. It's just that simple. It's not this whole song and dance and game. It's just what's true for me. So when I make a decision, I don't ask, what will people think? I ask, can I respect myself after? Is this what I want? Does this feel good and right in my brain, in my body, in my heart? And those questions are the ones that slowly rebuild trust with yourself. And trust with yourself, that is one of the greatest, possibly the single greatest form of freedom that you will ever experience. And I think one of the saddest things that women have been taught is that confidence, it comes from becoming better or more attractive, accomplished, productive, more disciplined. That's a big one. I don't think that's confidence. I think confidence is much quieter. I think it's keeping promises to yourself. It's saying, this thing matters to me, and then acting accordingly. It's discovering that your own voice is trustworthy and that your own intuition deserves to be heard, and that your joy and your peace is worth protecting. So when people ask me, who are you now? I'm not a completely different person, even though it probably looks that way from the outside. I'm just so much more of myself, unedited and unfiltered. There's no limit on expressing my personality anymore. I'm much quicker to leave environments where I don't feel emotionally safe, much more honest. I've stopped confusing endurance with love and self sacrifice with goodness. What was I thinking? I've stopped believing that peace is something I earned by becoming smaller, because real peace is something you experience. And my gosh, is it amazing when you don't have to perform anymore. So if you're sitting here today thinking, well, I don't know who I am anymore, I want to tell you something, not as a coach or an expert, just another person who has walked through this. I don't believe she's gone. I believe and know that she's waiting. She's waiting for enough safety and honesty and quiet and curiosity to just resurface and come out again. And the part that I love is that I don't think you're going to rediscover exactly who you were before. I think you're going to discover someone wiser, and someone who knows herself and who trusts herself, and someone that you think, wow, she's amazing. And when that happens, you'll realize something very beautiful. You were not rebuilding your life, you're just finally living it as you are. It's this coming home experience. And that's really what my community is all about, of women online, is I just create a space for them to be them. Be you. As long as we're kind and we're respectful of one another, you're safe to express any opinion you want, express yourself in any language you want. I just want you to be you and to share who you are and know that you're not going to be judged or criticized for it. And in that, do you have so much peace? There is so much peace. For years, I believed that peace meant, and I think a lot of women think this, peace means the absence of conflict. So if everyone is okay, if I was okay, if he was okay, if they were okay, if everyone's happy, then you can finally relax. For a moment anyway, because you're always sitting on edge. But that's not peace at all. That's actually just vigilance. Real peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the absence of pretending. It's waking up and realizing I don't have to edit myself today. I don't have to do a quick pass through Photoshop. One of the greatest surprises of healing was realizing that having boundaries did not in any way make me less loving. They made me more valuable for the right people. When I was younger, I thought that boundaries push people away. But now I know that they are just a filter. They gently allow healthy relationships to deepen while the unhealthy ones just drift off. And that is a beautiful and remarkable thing. It's not about having perfect people, it's about having healthy people. And there's a very big difference between the two. Healthy people apologize and they repair and they become curious and they hear no and they don't make you feel guilty for it at all. They celebrate your growth. They're not threatened by it or compete with it. They don't require you to become smaller so that they can in turn feel bigger. And once you experience relationships like that, it's almost impossible to mistake any form of emotional chaos for love again. So, one of the good questions to ask yourself is, who do I become around this person? Not what do they think about me? Who cares what they think about you? It's not, do they approve of me? Or how do I make them like me more? No, it's who do I become? Am I more generous and peaceful and creative and playful and honest? Or do I become tense and guarded and small? And if you've watched this entire video, I want you to remember that question because I honestly believe it can change your life. And like I said, not overnight, but it is conversation by conversation and decision by decision. And there's something that I wish someone had told me years ago. You do not need to become a perfect judge of character. And some people think that they are, and good for them. I think it's impossible. People are complicated. Sometimes healthy and wonderful people make unhealthy choices. Sometimes people that are hurting hurt people. Sometimes we misunderstand each other. The goal is not perfection, it is just awareness because awareness gives you options. You notice sooner, you ask better questions, you communicate more honestly, and you leave earlier when it's necessary. Awareness doesn't guarantee easy relationships. It simply gives you the freedom to choose more wisely. Sometimes people ask me, do you ever regret everything that happened? And that's a complicated question because I don't celebrate pain, but I do think it's extremely valuable. I don't think suffering automatically makes us wiser. Some people become bitter or fearful or they stay stuck. Pain does not in any way guarantee growth, but reflection does. Healing and honesty does. Community certainly does, as well as doing the work. And that's why two people can go through nearly identical experiences and come out completely different. One becomes harder and the other becomes clearer. One becomes very cynical while the other develops discernment. One closes their heart and it's this hard little rock, and the other learns to protect it without closing it. And I know which woman I want to become. And today, when I look around, I notice something that would have been impossible to recognize a decade ago. I don't have a single relationship, not a single one that requires me to become someone else. My closest friends know the real me, the playful me, the opinionated me, sometimes the obnoxious me, ambitious, the imperfect me. In the end, it's the imperfect me. And I don't spend my days wondering if I said the wrong thing or I wore the wrong outfit or I laughed too loudly or whatever it is, because I finally trust that the right relationships have room for the whole entire person. And if they don't, then they're probably not the right relationships. And that's probably the biggest hidden gift of healing. Not that life becomes easier and not that people stop disappointing you or that you no longer have any conflict, but that you don't abandon yourself in order to keep other people comfortable. And they're okay with that. And that is freedom. So if you're watching this today and there's a part of you that's wondering, have I lost myself? Or I know I've lost myself. What happened? She's not gone. She adapted. She became incredibly intelligent and she learned how to read every room. We develop an insane amount of skills that are quite beneficial if we use them for our benefit. She learned how to survive, and those things are not failures. Those are brilliant adaptations. But there's surviving and then there's living, and those are not the same. And just maybe it's time to thank that version of yourself. Don't criticize her. Thank her. She got you here, and you're in a place where you're ready for something more and something big. And she did the best she could with what she had and what she knew, and she protected you the best that she could. So there's no reason to be angry. It's in the past anyway. You just don't need her to keep doing that same job anymore, because now you know something that she didn't. You know that healthy love and relationships do not require constant editing. Healthy friendships in no way, shape, or form require shrinking. A healthy work environment doesn't require you to pretend. The list goes on and on. The healthiest relationships in your life will invite more of you and draw more of you out, not less. So here's what I hope for you. I hope one day someone asks you, when did you find yourself again? And instead of telling them about divorce or a breakup or a promotion or whatever it is, you just smile and you say, I didn't find myself. I stopped abandoning myself, because there's a very profound difference. Finding yourself suggests that she was gone, and she wasn't. She was just waiting. She was waiting for enough honesty and enough courage and safety and enough self-respect to finally come home. So if you remember nothing else from today, please remember this. You did not lose yourself because you were weak. That is not true. I argue with women about this daily. You adapted because you were human. And the same extraordinary brain, the same beautiful nervous system that learned to survive can learn something even more remarkable. It can learn that it is finally safe to be fully, unapologetically you.